Good afternoon. So we are here today to present our research that was done in Canada. And as we have been discussing today, Nutrigenomics, it's the next or the actual paradigm of nutrition. How can we apply this for our actual research, and how can our dietitians and the consumers being able to use this information that's really rich. So I would like to thank you, the two institutions that made the funding possible for this research. And the aim of this research was to compare two different approaches where we used two methodologies to distribute the gene test results to our groups. In one, they received by email, and in another one, the dietitian led the information to them. And the other objective of our research was to help to develop a tool where we can improve the use of gene tests for the consumers.
Great. So just to walk you through the method that we use. So the actual research design was a sequential explanatory mixed method study. So we had a quantitative and qualitative component to it. And we're just going to present on the quantitative component. So how the design was is that we recruited individuals between 35 to 55 years of age, healthy adults. And if they were eligible, we had certain criteria that they had to meet. So if they were eligible, they came and had a baseline assessment done with a trained registered dietitian who collected information on their health status, took food records, we did nutrient analysis, took anthropometrics, and also assessed where they were in the stages of change and also what their personal goals were. So when they visited with the dietitian as well, they had the swab done, and then they were randomized into two groups. So as Vanessa mentioned, one group, they just got the standard kind of direct-to-consumer report, and then the other group, they came back and saw the registered dietitian again, and she came up with a plan that integrated their gene test results along with their personal goals and the nutrient analysis information, as well as their health status information. So then after the intervention, we did follow up with at 2 time points to collect information about their diet, their health-related quality of life, as well as some other measures, but those were our primary outcomes. And then we had a final visit where they came and had their anthropometrics done again, and then a full diet assessment. And that's where we did the focus groups and the qualitative component. So as far as what we looked at as measures, we looked at pre and post intervention group differences on quality of diet and health-related quality of life, and we also looked at group differences. And the analysis we used was 2-way repeated measures of ANOVA and binomial tests of 2 proportions. Vanessa.
So our population was composed by adults in the average of 45 to 50 years old or 50 years old. The majority were women. They are well educated with a high income, and 85% was in a relationship. 90% report that they have a good social support, as well as the majority relate that they have good health, good healthy eating habits, and 72% relate that they have they qualify their own health as at least good.
Great. So the actual results, if we look at the pre-post differences on different diet quality measures and the major nutrients. So we looked at the Healthy Eating Index Canadian version. You're probably familiar with the American one. Which is kind of this overall diet quality measure that looks at fruits and vegetable intakes, processed foods, that kind of thing. And so we did see improvements in diet quality. We also did see improvements in their fat intake levels. So for the intervention group, much greater improvements, significantly higher. Saturated fat, there was improvements as well, and omega-6 fatty acid intakes. If we look at the micronutrients, we did find a couple of interesting trends there. So for sodium, we saw these really great reductions in sodium intake, particularly in intervention group, and it was significantly higher. But for certain micronutrients, so for B12 and for calcium, we actually saw the intakes go down when in fact we were hoping that they would increase. And there were significant differences there as well. We also looked at interaction effects, and we found that there was significant interaction of time by group assignment for diet quality and also for sodium intakes. And then when we looked at the phenotypic and genotypic information by group assignment, we did see that total fat, there was improved intakes in the intervention group, saturated fat. And a key thing that we also did see as well is that for those that did get the intervention, that the proportion of people that went within the acceptable macronutrient distribution range was much higher than in the control group. So when we often think about, we're using individual approaches, but when we look at these sort of population measures like the AMDR, we're seeing really good improvements there as well. Then we looked at group interactions, and we did see a time by group interaction for sodium. And when we did post hoc analysis, we found that that was in the intervention group.
Well, as a strength of our research, we can say that we have a high retention rate because all the 55 adults that began the study with us, they continued until the end. We had a defined adult population with really clear criteria for inclusion and exclusion. We applied the food frequency questionnaire to validate the 3 food records that we measured in the baseline and then in the post-measurement at the 9-week. Our limitations were that the measures for intake were self-reported. We had a modest sample size of just 55, as I mentioned, and we have a limited generalizability because we had our own population of adults, so we can't generalize the results for other populations.
Great. So just to conclude, the implications of our findings, we found, of course, that tailored interventions, we had improved intakes with fat and sodium, so those key nutrients we want to see improvements in the population on, improvements in diet quality, and as well as in the health-related quality of life scores, which was an interesting finding. Just as an aside to that, we also looked at self-efficacy, and we thought that that might mediate or moderate that relationship, but we didn't find significant findings for that. When people are given phenotypic, genotypic information, we did find improved total fat, saturated fat, and sodium intakes. But as you'll notice that we didn't see improved intakes across all of the different risk gene variants, particularly for the micronutrients. So that's something to think about for future research and future education interventions that we might think for this group. And so future work, is to look at making more comprehensive changes in the diet, how we might do that and leverage the results from this to create tools for education that are much more consumer friendly. Thank you.